That urgency could also be heard in calls for action in Florida today, where hundreds of protesters gathered in Tallahassee for another kind of education protest to hold another elected official to account. This week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis indicated a potential expansion of his decision to ban the new Advanced Placement African American Studies course, which is still in its pilot stage. DeSantis and Florida officials objected to the course's initial inclusion of contemporary themes, Black queer studies, and Black feminism. The College Board has since stripped the course of those lesson plans and removed the works of scholars like Bell Hooks, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Kimberly Crenshaw, the woman who coined the term intersectionality. DeSantis is now threatening to sever Florida's relationship with the College Board and its AP courses altogether, potentially replacing all AP courses with other methods of conferring college credit to high school students in the state. Today, protesters marched from Holmes Bethel Missionary Baptist Church to the Capitol building in Tallahassee to say that they have had enough of the governor's so-called war on woke. Led by Reverend Al Sharpton, demonstrators held a rally at the state capitol to save our history and to give the governor a little lesson on American protesting.
After 57 years of Jim Crow, it was education, Brown versus the Board of Education, that kicked off in 1954, that inspired Rosa Parks to sit down a year later in 1955. If you would study history, Governor, you would have known to mess with us in education always ends to your defeat. You talk about Florida is where woke died. We went from woke to work. And we gonna work on you, DeSantis, until we tell the whole story.
Sharpton invoked a long history of civil rights protests in America and how they have moved the needle of progress. And today's demonstration served as a reminder to DeSantis that that pattern of protest and progress will continue, no matter how many history courses and books he tries to ban. In the meantime, there are still classroom libraries that have been papered over, subject matter that has been banned from classrooms, AP classes that are unavailable in the state of Florida, and the war on woke expanding nationwide. Joining us now is the renowned scholar and writer Kimberly Crenshaw. She is a professor of law at Columbia and the University of California, and of course, executive director of the African American Policy Forum. Professor Crenshaw is a critical race pioneer, literally the person who's at the center of so many of these debates, who coined the term intersectionality, which is a word that describes how race and gender and class and other traits intertwine. And both CRT and intersectionality have been removed from that new AP African American Studies course by the College Board down in Florida. Professor Crenshaw, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. Apologies for the long introduction, but we felt it was important. Let me first just ask you about this term culture war, because the idea of a culture war implies that there are these two sides battling it out. But what this feels like is much more asymmetric. It feels much more like an attack. Do you think we need to reframe how we are talking about what is going on, courtesy of Governor DeSantis and other Republicans who are waging this battle?
I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. And in fact, one of my good friends, Jason Stanley, just wrote an op-ed in yesterday's Guardian arguing precisely that. To call this a culture war is not only a misnomer, it is actually disinformation. People aren't being told exactly what is happening. So you're right to point out the asymmetry of this. You're right to point out that, you know, a culture war is often a war of values. It can be, you know, warring op-eds. It's not a faction that basically takes the law in its own hands and determines that there are ideas, there are practices, there are policies, there are interests that can no longer be legally expressed in public institutions. That's what DeSantis has done, and that's what upwards of 17 states have done across the country, pursuing what they consider this anti-wokeness crusade. What it actually is, Alex, is a retrenchment. It is a reaction. It is a response to the tremendous mobilization that happened in 2020 in response to the killing of Breonna Taylor, of George Floyd, and frankly, I think the fear that many people saw when in every state there was a massive protest that involved people of all ages and all races. Anti-racism was becoming a majoritarian value that was demanding people to pay attention, not to just individuals who are racist, but to institutions and structures. And that's precisely why the backlash has gone after the frameworks that allow people to understand our history in order to change our present.
Yeah, I think we have a copy of some of the op-ed that you mentioned, and I think it bears reading an excerpt from it. The passing of these laws signals the dawn of a new authoritarian age in the United States, where the state uses laws restricting speech to intimidate, bully, and punish educators, forcing them to submit to the ideology of the dominant majority or lose their livelihoods and even their freedom. My question to you is, you use the word retrenchment just now, and I would love if you could sort of frame up the tradition that this fits into in America, because I think that there was contentment for at least some years, maybe in the early aughts or the mid aughts. I don't even know, the early part of the 21st century, where it felt like these issues had been litigated. But this feels so retrograde, so very much in line with an America that is not 40 years old, but 150 years old, like Civil War America. That's where it feels like, at least from my vantage point, we are at. How do you contextualize this in terms of American history?
Well, let's elevate some concepts or some sound bites that sound like they came from the 19th century, right? We've got states' rights. People are basically making arguments that our states' rights allow us to say that there are certain ideas that cannot be taught about your history. The idea that white rights trump Black realities, that white emotions and comfort are more important than access and equity to Black people and other people of color. I mean, these ideas are old ideas. They're ideas that basically suggest that your civil rights violate my civil rights, and there can only be my civil rights. So basically, you don't get a chance to have your history told. You don't get a chance to vote for the people you want to vote for. You don't get a chance to be full 100% citizens of this country. And the reality is that Black freedom of people of color has always been a divisive concept. The very effort to actually create laws that eliminate the ability to advocate and to learn about racial justice under divisive concepts, that tells you everything you need to know about how retrograde this moment and this movement actually is.
Critical race theory pioneer, writer, scholar, the woman at the center, literally, of all of this, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Please come back to this show all the time. We will ask you to speak extemporaneously for long periods of time. We will never censor anything you have to say. All words are allowed. We really appreciate your time and efforts. Thanks for joining us today.
And Alex, if I may, I just want to tell people that Black scholars have a new petition called A Call to the College Board to Restore the Integrity of AP Courses. They'll be able to see it tomorrow on Medium.
We will be looking out for that. Thank you for the heads up, Professor.